something that everyone could be proud of when they cross the finish line of any race is how they treated themselves, how they approached it. This year in Austin was just another check of the box of how much I love the process of doing what I am building. Welcome back to the Matt Choi Show, episode number 5. We just got done running in the Austin Marathon, which is one of my favorite races to run in all of the country. And I've ran in some of the biggest world major marathons. I've done 4 out of the 6. And Austin is still a special, special race to me. Obviously, this is where I live, even though a lot of people don't think that I live here. Literally, I can't tell you guys how many times people have been like, yo, like, why are you in Austin? Like, I thought you lived in New York or LA. And I'm always just like, I don't know how to make it more clear that I live here. I mean, I've run on Lady Bird. I run on the track at Yellow Jacket Stadium. Nonetheless, Austin is a really, really special race for me. When I first moved here 2 years ago, it was one of the first events and marathons that I did when I got here. And ever since I ran it in 2022, I told myself that I would run this race almost every single year until I don't live in Austin anymore. And I still live here 2 years later. So we're back. So I want to do a breakdown of the Austin Marathon 2024 race. To this year, I set a personal best time on this course. If you guys have ever ran in Austin or have ran in this race before, whether it was a half marathon or a full marathon, you probably know that this course is pretty damn hilly. And that makes it a lot more challenging than a very fast course like Chicago or Berlin or Tunnel Vision, other courses where I was able to run sub 3 hours. So we're gonna do a full Strava breakdown, mile by mile, breaking down how I was feeling, the mile splits, and when I figured out that I probably was going to be a little bit off of my sub 3 goal. But to give you guys some context, my goal for the race coming into Austin was I wanted to attempt a sub 3 marathon. My previous times in this course was 2022, I ran a 3:05. In last year, 2023, I ran a 3:17. So I was kind of in that realm of like not really being a sub 3, but like I was pretty close 2 years ago. Last year, I was dealing with some cramps and I just kind of knew it wasn't my day. It doesn't help that I also ran like 2 miles to the start line. So I was kind of like somewhat fatigued. But the beautiful thing about the Austin Marathon is that it always lines up around my birthday. I turned 29 2 days ago. So I always told myself when I ran my first marathon ever, which was on my 26th birthday back in 2021, that I would run however many miles I turned that year. So last year I ran 2 miles to the start and then ran 26.2, 28 miles. This year I didn't want to do that because I wanted to actually run a fast time or try to. So I ran the 26.2 in the morning and then I ran another 3 miles late in the evening at like 10:30 at night. But I say that to say, it's always been my tradition to do that. And it just happens that the Austin Marathon is always around that same time as my birthday. And even though I celebrated a couple days early because my birthday is technically the 20th and I ran on the 18th, I still kind of count it as the same thing. But let's further break down the Austin Marathon experience. So this year I ran a 3:03:04 as my final time. So I beat my personal best time on this course by about 2 minutes. And it was a really good day to run. I think on Sunday during the marathon, it was chilly. And I think a lot of people were probably a little bit like cold going into this race because if you live in Austin, we're so blessed with beautiful weather, especially early into the year. And it was one of those days where it was like 45 was maybe the max, like the heat, like the high. And when you're running in the morning, like you kind of get that cold breeze. But for my runners out there, you guys know it's a lot more enjoyable to run in the cold than when it's really hot. If you're spectating, it's not as enjoyable to be in the freezing cold because your hands are freezing and you're standing around and you're waiting for your runner to come by and it could be pretty cold. But when you're running, you thoroughly enjoy it and you soak in the cold frigidness of the weather. And for me, it really helped. I was running shirtless. I felt really good. I felt like I was able to keep my pace and especially early on in the race, there's a lot of hills. So it's like understanding when you're going to push and when you're going to settle back. And the 303, honestly, I'm really happy with, because 2 weeks ago, I really injured my back and I was dealing with a lot of back spasms, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to really pull or really push in this race. And coming to the start line, I felt pretty good. And honestly, more than pretty good. I felt good. Like I didn't feel like I was in pain. And I talked to my physical therapist and he was like, what's your strategy going into the race? Like, are you going to go sub 3? Are you going to just run it? And I told him that I was going to ease my way into it. I wanted to negative split the run. If you don't know what negative split means, it basically means every mile split gets a little bit faster. So you start a little bit more conservative. You utilize your energy periodically, and then you get faster with every single mile, or you maintain your speed like in the in-between parts. But it was really a good effort coming back from the injury, and I'm more than satisfied with the end result. So yeah, that was kind of the Austin Marathon, just like in totality. It was awesome to just see a bunch of friends, a bunch of people that support me, a bunch of you guys that follow me or have followed me along this journey. It was really an awesome race to kind of be a part of. And I always say, like, it's anytime people do something challenging, do something hard, it's always like a level of respect and something that people should be proud of. Like, so many people came up to me and was like, yo, this is the first marathon I ever ran. This is the first half marathon I ever signed up for. And to sign up for a very challenging course, you should really, really give yourself a pat on the back, because it'd be really easy to just like sign up for an easy race and like do one that's going to be an easy course. And I think that there's a level of respect to be had when you do something very challenging like a marathon, and then you do it on a challenging course, which kind of adds a little cherry on top. So that was a beautiful thing to see. So 29 miles on my 29th birthday. What a way to celebrate. I want to kind of go into my Strava splits, and we're going to break down each mile. And I want to kind of talk about how I was feeling during those points and kind of like my mentality throughout the race, because I think this is something that marathons are about pacing. It's really important not to get out the gate too hot, because it's a long race. You're moving your body for anywhere from 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, depending on, when you finish. So I think it's really important to understand how to pace something like a marathon. And I think it's why having the pacing groups throughout the race at Austin is really awesome, because you can have a chance to just run with someone that's going to set the pace. They're going to set the tone, and all you need to do is stick with the pack. And I always say this, when I ran Austin 2 years ago, the 305 pace group helped me set a PB at that time. And all I did was I literally ran with them as long as I could. And then they slowly took off towards the end because I was like running out of gas, and they did a really good job of pacing, and it helped me get to that finish line. So I think it's really important as you're pacing for your own race, or if you're running with a pace group or you're doing it for a friend, to understand how to treat the mile that you're at and the mentality almost. So we're going to put this Strava onto the screen, and I'm going to just kind of break down. So mile 1 and mile 2, we're going up South Congress, so there's a little bit of a slight incline where elevation gain was right around 150 feet. So my pace was right around 7:15, 7:13 pace. So to run a sub 3 hour marathon, you need to be at a 6:50 per mile pace. That is running that for 26 miles. Now, obviously, when you're running through a hilly course, there's going to be moments of ups and downs, right? So there's going to be times where you're going to run a little bit slower, but also times where you're going to run a little faster, and it kind of evens out. So first 2 miles were a little slower. Miles 3 were 6:58. Mile 4 was 6:48. And as you get to mile 4, you're actually making a right turn on 183, which it's a highway. If you don't know Austin, then this might not be relevant to you. But nonetheless, you climb South Congress, which up to mile 3. Then you make a right turn on a highway, or right before a highway, and then you start running down South First Street. And just like as you climb, and I always say this, if you climb up a hill, you always have to come back down. So the down part is from miles 3.5 to like 6, where you're gonna pick up a little speed just because of the gravity. So those splits, miles 4 was 6:48, miles 5 6:43, and miles 6 was 6:37. So in those 3 miles, it kind of evens out to roughly a 6:55 pace because my first 2 miles were relatively slower. So that is a really good point just to keep in mind, guys. Like, I always tell this for people that are running hills or any type of races that have hills. Like, don't be so concerned at what your watch is saying, because you can get so beat up and so caught up into just the pace and the time. But let your body just feel through it, right? It's one of those things where as you run more, you kind of understand like the effort that you're putting out, and that will help better. It will give you more of a peace of mind of like, okay, like I don't have to like press right now. It's like, let me just utilize the hill. Let me utilize the downhill to get me through the first 6 miles of the race. So that was kind of my mindset as well. It's like, you don't want to exhaust yourself too early, and you don't want to freak out that, oh, I was started off slow, so now I need to catch up. Like, naturally, it's a long race. You have plenty of time to get there. Okay, so as we keep going through mile 7 through mile 8, and now we're making our way into downtown. We just crossed over the First Street Bridge and making our way now to like Terrytown, and then making our way up through Enfield. So mile 7 was 6:42, mile 8, 6:50, mile 9, 7:08. Mile 9 is right around Enfield Hill. And it's one of the next hills that you're going to face as you make your way through Terrytown. And clearly that effort was a little slower, which makes sense. But if we're looking at those first 9 miles, we're still roughly like in a good pacing. Like we're a good pace to be right around sub 3. So I'm not really too upset about that. I think as I look further through this Strava mile segments, you can kind of see where I slow down. So let's continue though. Miles 10, 11, 12, we were at 6:54, 6:56, 6:50, mile 13, 6:52. Really, really good point right there where we're staying on sub 3. And miles 10 through 13, there's some rolling hills that you're facing. There's a big hill at mile 12 right after you know, after you're on Enfield, you kind of go through another highway and you're making your way back to downtown. And that's where there's a segment where it goes half marathon, splits off to finish on Congress, and then the full marathon continues up to North Austin, like where UT is. And that gap is where mentally you really have to lock in, because it's easy to get distracted at all the people that are running the half. But honestly, when you're at that point, like you still have another half marathon, you have another 13 miles to run. So you have to stay even keel and understanding that, we still have another 13 miles to run. So when I came in at the half point, I think I came in at 1:31. So I was a little bit over sub 3 pace. And if you don't know what sub 3 is, it's sub 3 hours. So it's 90 minutes per half marathon, right? So 90 minutes for 13.1 miles. I came in at 91 minutes. So I was a minute over the sub 3 pace. Knowing that, I had an idea of like, okay, if I'm going to hit sub 3 today on this course, I'm going to need to run faster at the end, because I need to shave off a whole minute. And that's something that you don't have to necessarily be too concerned about at mile 13, but it's something to consider as you get closer to the end. Like, hey, at some point I'm going to need to kick it in gear to make sure I cross the finish line in under 3 hours. So as we continue here, we're making our way up north now, and we're facing some rolling hills. We're making our way up to UT. So miles 14 was 7:02, mile 15, 7:01, mile 16, 7:05. So I'm a little slower now, definitely a little bit off track, right around 10 seconds or so. The good thing is we summit UT. And at mile 18, we're making our way kind of at the end of UT's campus and making our way back down. Really good job of pacing it here, especially as we fight up a hill at mile 19. Miles 18 were 6:50, mile 19, 6:55, mile 20, 6:48, mile 21, 6:58, mile 22, 6:53. So that segment, really good job of understanding pacing, understanding that, hey, we're now getting into the latter half of the race. I always tell people that the real race starts at mile 20, and you have to have enough kick and enough juice to finish off the last 10K strong, because that's really where you make your bread and butter. It's getting to mile 20 and then understanding that, okay, we have 6.2 left. We really need to be able to kick it in gear here. So we get to mile 21, 6:58, mile 22, 6:53, mile 23, 7 minutes even, 24, 7:09, 25, 7:07, and now we're on the east side of Austin running in a very, very quiet part of the race. It gets somewhat lonely on the east side because there's not as many people cheering you on. There's a lot less runners around you. It's a really more, like, I always say this, it's like a very like solo time. It's about solitude. It's about really digging deep in your internal software, in your internal brain of like, hey, this is what I signed up for. No one's really cheering me on. No one's out here rooting me on. There's not many other runners around you, but you have to find something internally to kind of keep you pushing and to stay on pace. And for me there, it's where I felt my legs getting a little bit heavy. And even looking at the splits now, right? 23, 7 minutes, 24, 7:09, 25, 7:07. I was definitely like slower. I couldn't find that second gear to really push it. So I was really trying to just maintain. And as it starts to warm up a little bit, your body is now starting to get fatigued. Good thing is I didn't really deal with much cramping there. I think I did a really good job of staying on top of nutrition throughout the race, whether it was my own gel packs or drinking the water in the noon that was on the course. I always tell people that, like, when I think about fueling for a marathon, I always like to stay ahead of fueling. And I always had different coaches that said, eat a gel every 4 miles, eat a gel every 30 minutes. And I kind of found this sweet spot where I eat a gel a little bit earlier than 30 minutes. So I'll eat it right at like 25 or 26 minutes just so I can get ahead of it. Your body still needs to digest the fuel that you're utilizing. And even though a lot of the gels are carbohydrate heavy, sugar heavy, like your body can digest it fast. But if you're able to get it in just a couple minutes ahead of time, it gives you some time to actually utilize it during the race. I brought 6 Spring Energies with me, and I ate them roughly at 25 minutes at every increments of 25 minutes for the duration of the marathon. And towards the end, I felt myself kind of like losing energy, so I kind of took some of them extremely early. I think I took the last gel I had, or the last 2 gels I took at mile 19.5 and then mile 21.5, so 2 miles apart, like just like getting it in my system. And I think that helped me not cramp towards the end, even though I was kind of getting to that point of exhaustion. As I look at these last splits, mile 26, 7:01, and then the last quarter mile, I was a 6:19 pace. So really kicking it in gear on that last quarter mile. The thing with Austin is that my good friend Jack Murray, who's a race director, there's a major hill at the very end of the race. On mile 26, you make a left turn on 11th Street, and you fight up this steep incline. And looking at it here, the elevation gain was 36 feet, which I don't necessarily think is like exactly accurate, but whatever, 36 feet it says on Strava. But it's about a quarter mile of this straight up incline at the very end of a race. And for everyone that's ran before, or even if you haven't ran, imagine running 26 miles and then having to face one last incline. It's like the final boss that you have to face in like a video game. And that is like that's what's stopping you from getting to the top of the mountain and then running downhill and then making one last turn to the finish line. It can be really demoralizing. And the funny thing is that last year I ran this race, and that during that point of the hill, I caught a major cramp, and I felt really defeated at that point last year because I was just like, my body wasn't feeling good. I was nursing like a little bit of an Achilles injury, and it's just like, I didn't have the race that I wanted to, and I didn't finish the race how I would have liked. And I got a really good clip. My brother was recording me last year and this year, and a friend of mine, Gilbert, who has a club out here, Gilbert's Gazelles, shout out to the Gazelles. He always stands at that bottom of the hill on 11th Street because he knows that it's where a lot of people struggle. And when you're that deep into a race any ounce of motivation or applaud or people rooting you on can kind of help you summit that hill, because it is daunting. And seeing him there, he said something to me, because last year he saw me cramp. This year he was like, today is a different day. He kept saying that. Today is a different day. And I really let that sink into my head, because I knew going into this race that I wanted to execute it a lot better than I did last year. And that hill last year took my soul. And I walked away this year, and I entered it this year knowing that I wanted to take that hill and dominate it, because last year it took my soul. But this year I went into it knowing that I was going to go on mile 26 on 11th Street, and that I was going to dominate that hill. And I thoroughly did. And the output and the ability to, compartmentalize that quarter mile and really dig deep to finish that race strong was in my head for the past 3 miles of the race. Like, I knew that when I saw downtown from the east side of Austin, that there was still one last boss. There was still one last hill that I had to conquer, because a lot can happen over a course of 26 miles. And that last hill was on my mind for a while. And I knew that I was going to dominate that hill. And I think it was really cool to have Gilbert see me from 1 year ago and see me on Sunday able to show up and put out a really good effort to climb that hill. So all in all, my last quarter mile was a 6:19 pace. I really was able to gain some momentum after summiting the hill on 11th Street, and it was a one left turn on Congress, and before you know it, you're on 9th Street, and that was where the finish line is. And crossing the finish line, I saw the time, and it was like 3:03:25 or something, and I was super fulfilled knowing that 2 weeks ago, I couldn't even walk. To then cross this finish line, setting a personal best time on a very challenging course, even though I didn't hit sub 3, like, it didn't bother me. Like, I truly was grateful at how I approached the race, how I approached the injury that I had, and dealing with the adversity and being resilient, over the 2 weeks of getting ready for the race, and then even during the race. I think that there's a lot of ways for people to make excuses of, oh, dude, like, I wasn't healthy. I didn't have a chance to do my last speed workout. I didn't have a chance to do my last long run. And for me, I think I was able to stay present in the moment. Even throughout my injury, it was staying really positive and present, even though I wasn't feeling great and I couldn't move my body. I couldn't walk. I was dealing with major back spasms. And the thought that not even the thought, crossing the finish line, it's saying 3:03:25 or whatever it did, and then my watch said 3:02:45. I was truly fulfilled at the effort, not necessarily just the time, but the effort that I gave to execute that race. And I think my message for anyone out there is that whether you hit a goal or not, something that everyone could be proud of when they cross the finish line of any race is how they treated themselves, how they approached it, the internal conversation that they're having with themselves, whether you reach your goal or not, I think is really important, because it translates into everyday life. And although hitting goals, setting goals, and reaching them are really important in life, and I truly believe that, equally, how you treat yourself when you don't hit the goals, I think is just as important. And I think for me, that was always my mindset going into this race, but also other things that I try to perform or other things I try to do. It's less about the actual end result, but it's way more about the journey of getting there. And I think if that's something that you guys can take away from this episode, or just from my experience in Austin this year, it's really fall in love with the process of doing whatever you're trying to achieve. And I promise you, at some point you will get the result you want, whether that's in the next race, or if it's in 3 races, or in the next business, or whatever you fill in the blank of what you're trying to build or do. But if you don't enjoy the process of getting there, you'll never be satisfied with the result. And I think for me, this year in Austin was just another check of the box of how much I love the process of doing what I am building. And I think it's why it helps me not burn out. I think it's why I'm able to show up in a positive way, even though negative things happen to me, even though there's haters that don't like me, or there's people that want to see me not do well or fail. Like, it's really staying so optimistic and honestly being very delusional in your own confidence of who you are and what you're trying to do that allows me to continue to show up in the way that I do. So that's kind of the breakdown in my final thoughts of the Austin Marathon. It was a really fun race, really awesome time to run with a lot of friends and see a lot of people that have supported me along this journey. And that's kind of a breakdown of the course. And I think something that people have really been asking me about, and something that I will definitely do a breakdown of for Instagram and for TikTok and like shorts, it's about the shoes that I wore. This is always a hot topic. I'm gonna take a sip and then we'll talk about the Hoka Cello X1s. So Hoka came out with a new shoe, the Hoka Cellos, and they're a new racing shoe. And I actually haven't worn Hokas in many races. So this was one of the first time I wore a pair of Hokas for an actual marathon. The Cellos are a carbon fiber shoe. It's one of their top of the line race day shoes. It's their first iteration. That's why it's the X1. And I was a big fan, truthfully. The only other time I wore this shoe was for a speed workout last week, right before the Austin Marathon. I did a quick 2K workout, so 2,000 meter repeat. Then I did 3 rounds of 1,000 meter repeats in the Hoka, in the Cellos, and they felt really good. They felt snappy. They felt really responsive. It was one of those shoes similar to like how I felt about the Nike Next Percent or the Adidas Pro from Adidas, like the E04. And all these carbon shoes, they give you that little extra pep in your step, a little extra bounce. And because I don't always wear carbon fiber shoes, I wear them very rarely. Like speed workouts and everyday runs, like I just wear daily trainers. And part of that is I want my feet to really build a strength and a tissue tolerance and an understanding that, hey, when you put these shoes on, it's gonna only benefit you, but don't rely on them. So to wear them for 26.2 miles for the very first time on Sunday was amazing. And the one thing that I'm always concerned about when I wear carbon shoes is, for some reason, like my Achilles gets flared up a little bit depending on the heel to toe drop, like how much of your heel is from the floor. And because the carbon shoes are very max cushion, they have that carbon plate in it, you're typically off of the ground anywhere from 8 to 11 millimeter of a drop, which changes the angle at which your foot actually hits the ground. Typically, when I'm walking around day to day, I'm always in Cane footwear, or I'm in Vivo Barefoots, which are minimalist barefoot shoes. So when I put on a carbon shoe with that much of a drop, sometimes my Achilles gets very tender and it gets sore, and some shoes really flare it up where it almost gets very irritated as I run. The very good thing about this shoe is I had no problem running in it, especially towards the end of the race. Most times when my heel flares up, it's in that like mile 18 to 26 mark where it's the back half of the race. And because of the repetition and the stompage of the ground, it just kind of tweaks on me a little bit. So I was really satisfied with that not happening. The shoe performed really well. I didn't really have any hot spots. I felt like the actual the shoe itself, like it's not as narrow as some of the Nikes that I've tested in the past. I felt like the midsole and like the ability to actually hit the ground was a lot more even than some of the other carbon fiber shoes I've tested. So I was a big fan of the Cello X1s. They weren't as light as the E04 from Adidas, which I think is one of the lightest shoes. I still have to test some of the new Nike Alphafly, Vaporfly, but I was a big fan of the Cello X1, and definitely a shoe that I would run in again for another marathon, in addition to doing some speed work in. So definitely go check them out. And I'm a big fan of the colorway. It was like a blue, neon, white colorway, which anytime you have a race day shoe, you kind of want it to pop. And I think Hoka did a really good job with that shoe. So I'm pumped to wear that again in the future. But yeah, I set a personal best on the course. You can't really complain about that. And I didn't even run more than 10 miles in that shoe. So those are all good signs. Yeah, that's my thoughts on the Hoka Cello X1s. if you guys are in the market for a new race day shoe, definitely go check them out. Obviously, there's so many carbon fiber race day shoes on the market, guys. Like, you know, don't always believe what I say or what any other creator or any influencer online is saying. I think ultimately the best thing to do if you're getting into running or you're in the market of a new shoe is to go test it yourself. And that's always my advice for any runner. It's what works for me might not work for you. What works for someone else that you follow online, it might not work for you. So take the advice and the feedback that you get online with a grain of salt, knowing that your running pattern, that your foot, it might need something different. It might need a different level of support. So that's always my feedback when it comes to recommendations for running shoes. I like the shoe. I like the style. I set a PB, no pain in my Achilles, and those are my bullet points here. And that's my thoughts on the shoe. And this is not sponsored. This is just my POV and my feedback off running the shoe itself. So that is my thoughts. Austin Marathon 2024. Final time was 3:03:04. And yeah, we celebrated my 29th birthday by running 29 miles. I ran 3 more miles. If you guys look at my Strava at 10:30 at night on Sunday. And part of that is just something I said to myself on my 26th birthday and something that I want to continue to stay true to. And I truly believe that building mental toughness and grit and discipline, so much of it is doing the things that you say you're going to do. Whether that's waking up at a certain time, whether that's saying that you're going to journal or you're going to stick to a diet or workout routine or fitness routine or whatever it is, I think that's truly how you build discipline. Or I don't even think it's a thing. I believe that that's how you build discipline. It's staying true to who you are and being a man of your word. And although my legs were exhausted and sore and I had gone to 2 after parties, I came back and I said, I'm going home to go run 3 miles. Because that's how I want to celebrate my 29th birthday. And I'm not, as I get older, I'm so much less about having big celebrations and parties on my birthday because I think it's just like, I don't know, it's not how I want to celebrate it anymore. Like, I truly enjoy the process of turning a year older and a year wiser and continuing to have a goal to chase after. And someone commented on one of my posts when I had made the post of I'm running at nighttime and I'm doing 3 more miles for my 29th birthday. My buddy Robin had commented, I can't wait till you turn 75. And truthfully, I can't wait either because on my 75th birthday, I will run 75 miles. And until I get to a point where I physically can't do it, that will always be the goal and the thing that I'm chasing after. It's the thought that as you get older, you get less durable. You can't do what you did when you were in your 20s. And my goal in life, no different than the Matthew McConaughey Oscar speech of my hero is me in 5 years, me in 10 years, me in 20 years. Like, because it gives me something to chase after. That goal of running 100 miles on my 100th birthday, whether it happens or not, is the goal that I'm chasing after. And that's going to require a level of consistency and discipline, not just in my 20s or my 30s, but until I'm 6 feet under. And that's going to continue to be the thing I chase after. It's the attempt of doing it. Whether it happens or not, I will be able to live with myself regardless. But the attempt of doing 75 miles on my 75th birthday, 100 miles on my 100th birthday, is the goal. So whatever that is for you, go chase after it and be the best version of yourself and always stay positive. The last thing I want to touch on, some of you guys might have saw this clip on my Instagram, and it was really funny to me. And the amount of support that I got after posting it, I was running a mile 3.5 on the course and I was eating a gel. My brother was recording me, and, you know, I got media access for everyone on my media team because I'm friends with the director, and I got access for them because I know some people get irritated. But we were filming a clip and it was at mile 3.5. I'm like 26 minutes in, eating a gel, and this dude was running right next to me and he was like giving me the finger. And in that moment, I thought to myself, how do I show this man grace and love and compassion, even though he might not like me, he might not like the fact that he's on camera, which obviously my goal and intent is not to get people on camera on purpose. It's just like, it's kind of by happenstance. But staying positive and showing people love and grace, even the people that don't like you or don't support you or disagree with you, I think it's very challenging at times, but it's the best way to show love to others that don't agree with you. And I think for anyone that's out there, if you like any of my stuff, if you follow me, if you've been seeing what I've been doing, like if there's one thing I would like to take away from the audience, it's not the times I run or it's not the videos I make of what I eat. I think it's showing people love and grace and compassion, even if they don't like you. If you can do that and be the bigger person in those scenarios, whether it's someone that cuts you off or someone that does something wrong to you, if you can be the bigger person in those moments, you will truly feel fulfilled and understand that it's more of a reflection of them and how they are doing, not a reflection of who you are. And I think in that moment when this guy was flicking me off, I felt so much love for this guy that he felt that type of a way. He felt that much in pain or hurtfulness or hate or envy or whatever emotions that he's dealing with to feel that he needs to give me the finger as we're running a marathon together. I hope that guy is doing well. And I wish him nothing but the best in the future for his next race. I literally told him, have a good race today. And I truly meant that. And I think for anyone listening, if you can give the people that hate on you, the people that disagree with you, if you can show them the most love and the most grace, it is the best formula to spread positivity. And that's the last thing I'm going to have to say on this pod. I appreciate all you guys tuning in. These episodes really become fun for me to share more of my thoughts and things that are going on in my ecosystem, and really just a chance for me to just chat with the people that follow me. And obviously the solo episodes are a little bit different than the ones with people on, but I truly appreciate all you guys tuning in. And I'll see you guys in the next one.